Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Look, I know it's a statement you see everywhere. Canada is collapsing. And well, the increased prevalence is because it's true. Not just figuratively, but literally. And the newest numbers coming out of the Canadian economy, well, they're absolutely brutal and they prove exactly what we've been saying since day one. That all the fear-mongering about Donald Trump's tariffs backfiring on the American economy was total garbage. Obviously, the side with a smaller economy, with a smaller population and a massive trade deficit was always going to get crushed. And now, well, it seems like it's happening in real time, Canada's FAFOing, probably because they chose the path of the woke economist, who thought that they were so much brighter and smarter than Donald Trump and understood foreign trade and macroeconomics way better. And well, as we know, you never trust the academic loser economist. It's just not something you do. I mean, take the information, sure, but always with a fat grain of salt. Otherwise, you might end up like Canada. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on as Canada's being delivered their very stupid prize. Seems like that's happening a lot these days. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so, I got to admit this is a little bit weird. This is the second time I've made a video on Canadian jobs numbers. Never knew this was information people cared about, but apparently it's all the rage these days. The entire world is watching Canada crash and burn. But anyways, the last disastrous jobs report was, I think, minus 33,000 jobs, and that was like worst case scenario. That was right after the auto tariffs and the steel and aluminum tariffs. And so, a lot of people probably thought that that was going to be the worst of it. But then comes the July numbers, and holy frickin' moly, the Canadian economy in the month of July alone lost over 40,000 jobs, 40,800 to be exact. And again, just to put that into American perspective, simply multiply it by 10 and there you go, you've got your economy of scale American number, let's say. That would equate to 410,000 job loss in a single month in the American economy. Scale for scale, since the population of Canada is roughly 1/10 of America. Although, of course, we're seeing that change every day as they open their border to millions upon millions of military-age men. But anyways, the news that we got today is negative 41,000 jobs in a single month in the country officially, now sliding into recession. And as all of this has been unfurling and happening, Canadians, in their infinite wisdom, voted for the same exact leadership that's been gutting their economy for a decade. And that, my friends, is why we are seeing a death spiral. It's the same party, the same policies, and so the same death spiral. The lost Justin Trudeau decade continues. And that means all the policies continue. In other words, as the Canadian economy is tanking, and there's less and less and less job opportunity, well, more and more people continue to come in, because guess what? The crazier element is in the midst of this economic collapse, the Liberal government is continuing with these accelerated mass migration numbers. The Canadian economy, the entire system, frankly, isn't ready to absorb that kind of influx. That's kind of been the problem over the last decade. Canada's economic model is fake. It's not a real economy. It's propped up by government spending and contracts instead of real private sector growth. It's arguably one of the least business-friendly environments in the entire world, not just in the West, not just in the G7 or the OECD. And so what happens when you drop millions upon millions upon millions of people over a decade into a stagnant economy that's currently experiencing a housing crisis? Well, you break the entire system. The fragile medical system is collapsing. It's nearly impossible to build homes in Canada because, again, government is so massive and runs everything. And so you aren't building homes, yet you're bringing in 500,000 people a year. You don't have an economy, you don't have homes, but you sure do have a whole load of unskilled labor and foreign students that you don't even care to assimilate. There isn't even the goal of assimilation. Now, it seems the Canadian population is fully okay. I mean, they're at peace with the idea of their country falling to Sharia law conquest.
Canada is a white supremacist, colonial, racist project, as is Israel, as is the state of Israel. So I don't even consider myself to be a Canadian because this is indigenous land and this land is occupied. So the people who are here, whether they are settlers, we firstly need to educate ourselves about what has happened on this land and what is continuously happening in order for us to be able to understand what our government or this government is doing abroad.
So not only do they have a mass migration problem, but they have an assimilation problem. In many cases, they're importing people who openly reject Western values, but they market it as cultural enrichment, but it's actually deliberate social fragmentation. And you know what? All of this, I think it all brings me to what's really going on. I think what we are seeing is intentional. The Canadian Liberal Party knows that they've driven the economy into a ditch with their globalist policies. They probably knew that that was going to happen since day one. They know that they've tanked growth, they've killed economic productivity, they've destroyed competitiveness, but none of that matters because now they've got their scapegoat, Donald J. Trump. And this is why you keep hearing all the finger pointing, right? Oh, it's not our fault that we lost 40,000 jobs. It's Donald Trump's fault and his unjust and fascistic tariff scheme. It was Donald Trump who did this to us. I honestly think that's the strategy here. They purposely want things to go bad so they can justify the last 10 years of economic stagnation as all being Donald Trump's fault. But obviously the numbers don't lie, and that statement that I just made basically alludes to the point I'm working towards. They've been in full-on collapse since well before Donald Trump won his second term. I mean, let's go ahead and pull the quarterly GDP numbers. Take a look at their post-pandemic recovery. Excluding the first quarter post-lockdowns, which obviously is totally propped up by the reopening of your economy, outside of that 1 month of high GDP growth, on an annualized basis, Canadian GDP never cleared 2%. And since 2023, their quarterly GDP average is less than 0.5%. That goes back to 2023. Let me think, who was president back then? Oh yeah, Sleepy Creepy Piss Pants Joe. There was no tariffs in 2023, but somehow all of this is Donald Trump's fault. Wake up, people, wake up. You are no longer living in a normal Western country. You are in a captured state run by globalist interests and central planners and foreign influence. In other words, you're the first post-national state, exactly as Justin Trudeau called it. But while Justin Trudeau calls it a post-national state, a progressive future utopia, I call it the WEF's cautionary tale. Canada's the warning sign, the warning of what happens when you hand your sovereignty and your economic prosperity over to the Davos cult. Canada has become the perfect example of how to destroy a nation without firing a single shot. Strangle the private sector, flood the market without building capacity, import cultural division, blame the foreign boogeyman for your own failures as you engage in the most cynical campaign propaganda imaginable, and then I guess just watch it all burn down. Well, that's what's happening. Canada's now circling the drain. Recession, job losses, mass migration, collapsing housing, stagnation, loss of freedom, malignant government growth. I'm pretty sure the Canadian government is a bigger entity than the private sector at this point. This is a country in full-on collapse. This is what happens when you give the reins to the woke. This is the kind of death spiral that takes decades to escape from, if ever. Although we have to admit that Canada is a very unique country that has tremendous natural resources. So, probably in the end, Canada will be fine. But it certainly isn't fine now. We've seen a 10-year-long death spiral. And what's crazy is all those ideas, that's exactly what the Democrats are trying to bring to America. That's Zoran Mamdani. He thinks that he's got all of these brand new, fresh ideas, as if he's the first person to pontificate and come to these communist ideas, not realizing he's one of millions. He thinks he's got all these amazing, progressive ideas. We're just going to give free stuff to everybody. But these ideas aren't fresh. No, they're the same pernicious policies that have destroyed nations. Don't fall for it, people. Just look at Canada. It's the cautionary tale, and wake the frick up. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.